Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo, Ram Studio Comics. Got another video today for you, and this one's going to be on studying like some expressions. So it's kind of some warm-ups before I get started on my Blackstone comic, which I've slowly been picking away at. Basically I have to keep doing the daily grind and then trying to find time to draw on my own comic, which is just a fun and exciting adventure in itself. So alright, so at any rate, I thought this would be cool to address because there's so many facets and aspects of drawing comics, and you see I try to bring a little of everything onto this YouTube channel, but one that I think we need to do a little bit more of is expressions and just overall moods for the you got various panels, you got storytelling going on there, and you got to draw a little bit of everything. So what we're going to do here is kind of just a disenchanted kind of upset face, so it'll be a guy probably mid 30s, 40s, somewhere in there, maybe a little older. I guess that part won't show as much in what we're doing here, but the main focal point will be that the gentleman is not happy. He's just upset. So what we'll do here is lay in the basic, proportions. You can start with the circle like this. I've seen a lot of people that do that. I just kind of go right for the head shape like this, draw a line. But if you want to simplify it, circle here, draw a line based on the type of character you're trying to draw, and line down the middle this way, halfway to here approximately the nose, halfway from there to there the mouth, and just start placing your features. After you do this long enough, you'll kind of skip some steps, so forgive me if I do that, but I want to get right to trying to show the characteristics of anger or just being unenthused. Now, the first thing is that the brow will be sloped down. So I'm going to get right to the eyes because the eyes kind of tell the story in a lot of emotions. So I want this kind of, not very wide open look, so the brows are down, something like this. And obviously based on how much you're trying to show this, I want to show just kind of a mediocre expression, not, a lot of times in comics it's real easy to go overboard in any one direction. Insanely angry, insanely happy, those seem to be the ones that everybody draws, but you also got to have the subtleties and the moods too. So like not just overly aggressive in this one, just basically really not too happy. And the other thing is, when you're drawing this type of look, have the colored part of the eyes covered pretty well, and then just get parts of the pupil like this. And you'll get two effects there. You'll get kind of a sleepy, tired kind of look, but also just unenthused, like expressionless, a little bit of wrinkles here, but not too many. If I go crazy with the wrinkles right here, it's going to look a lot more like an angry frown. So just a few in there. I'll erase some of these guidelines now. And hopefully I'll do enough of these where I'll create a playlist on this and just call it like expressions or something, because it really is important. There's just a lot of areas in your bookmaking that you're going to need a variety of emotions. So this is really important to practice. I would say this is as important as anything else, if not more so. I mean, it should start here and maybe work out to other things, because like I said, there's just a lot of people, myself included, that get in the habit of just drawing overly angry, overly happy, and then plain faces. But you gotta get all those other expressions in there to really tell a good story. Alright, and as far as the mouth, just kind of straight across, maybe slightly downsloped with the sides of the mouth. As far as the cheeks, not much. You know, you would just have a little bit of the line work off to the side. And hair doesn't tell much of the story unless, you know, he just got beat up and maybe his hair is all messed up, or he just jumped out of bed, so he's got bed head. But for the most part, you know, you want to get the storytelling primarily in the face. Ears generally don't tell any stories. Ears are just ears. Okay, so there's, you know, pretty unenthused character, you know, just like, life is just rough. It's been a rough week. Or maybe he's just looking at somebody and going, I just generally just don't like you. You know, it's nice too when you have little emotions like this, and then you can work up. Like the next scene, you could go from this to the dramatic yell or something, and it makes that next scene that much more impactful, or segues to it really nicely. So just little things to keep in mind why it's so important to practice this stuff. Oh, and I also want to take the time to thank everybody. We're coming up to the 20,000 sub mark, and pretty stoked about that. So I just want to thank everybody that's contributed and been part of this channel, because it's went a lot further than I ever expected, even to this point. So it's pretty cool. Thanks, guys and gals. The other thing that you could do to maybe push this further is you could accentuate parts like this, like under the lip, that little pouty kind of shadow under the bottom lip. That would kind of do it, you know. So little things like that, you could, you know, do more wrinkles, and just remember, more wrinkles adds age to the character instantaneously. Less of a solid jawline would make him look a little more overweight. So if you want to add weight to this character, you can soft erase the jawline down. Like right now, he probably looks like he's maybe in the 220 range or something. I don't know how to really gauge that, but then you could take this jawline and maybe round it down to where it meets the neck, like this, and really make this part of the jawline disappear. But definitely the line that connects the two, you can make that disappear, and then even add a secondary like wrinkle like that, and you start adding weight. And the more that you, like I said, erase this line and have less of a actual jawline and just more of a kind of a flip into the neck or something, it shows, you know, starts making them look a little bit more weighted. And then obviously if you add a chin, then he starts getting really big, and then widen the neck, and, you know, so on and so forth. But just some little tips there for adding weight to the character. I don't want this guy to look too out of it, so I'll just keep my jawline going the way it was. Okay, so now the other part of this that I want to show you real quick, something I've been doing a lot more of lately. I like to always share my little ideas here. I'll throw a blue line over top, or a layer like this, add screen mode, and then I got my little blue line. I could tone this one down so it's less distracting. Add another layer over top. You've probably seen me do this plenty of times if you watch the channel. But the other thing that I go in and do is, after I've got a decent enough sketch like this, I'll go right to inks. And it's just fun to do. It's kind of a good practice. It does a couple things. One, it's good practice. And two, it speeds you up for producing this stuff. So if you aren't producing a book on time, or you're not getting pages out like, you got to set goals for yourself. So say it's like 2 pages a week, like I wish I could do 2 pages a week right now, but I work a couple jobs, so it's like I really can't do that quite that much right now. But it's good to set those goals for yourself and then time yourself and try to bump up your speed. And this is one of those things that'll do that. So you basically map yourself, map your speed, and then come up with little techniques like this. Maybe you don't get the art as refined as you like. I like, pretty clean line work and stuff like that. But, 1 page of really clean line work per month versus, 4 relatively nice pages per month. I mean, do the math. It makes more sense to get a book out there, so. And a lot of people aren't focused on the details like we are as artists. Like, we think they are, and definitely some people are looking, but for the most part, people are more impressed with production and getting that stuff in their hands. So you gotta weigh those two, and it's an uphill battle for an artist because you really get into your art and you really want to make this stuff look as good as you possibly can. But you also got to look at the almighty deadline. So things like this really help do that. So that's why I wanted to show you this real quick. I've been doing this a lot more, and I actually enjoy it because it's, you learn a lot about your process by doing this. And it just brings me back to when I do shows, and I, generally sketch something out and I go right to inking and right to some color. So it's pretty much more like traditional drawing anyways, if you do it this way. You don't want to over refine your work, just like you don't on paper. You don't really refine too many times because you've got you'll end up with a messy sheet of Bristol board or whatever you're using. So hopefully this comes out nice and I don't tell you one thing and then the quality comes out another. But that's where you just got to make it work. Like another thing that I always remember, an old boss of mine told me at a art shop that I worked at, we all make mistakes. The only difference from an amateur to a professional is a professional knows how to fix his mistakes. Such a simple adage or whatever that word is. But it makes total sense. Like, we all make mistakes constantly, but it's how you deal with those and how you get through them that makes you a professional. And there's a lot of things that you can touch up in your work as you're progressing and still pull it out to a nice piece without, constantly throwing it in the garbage and starting over. You got to really break that type of mentality. Try to get that little glare in the eyes. The other thing I try to keep in mind when I'm inking too is to always break up lines in different ways. Never trace around your object with one line. Give it, go from a nice heavy line on this cheek right here to maybe a couple little line breaks. And always, just always adding different line weight. Gives the artwork a lot more interest. And this is another thing I've been trying to do more of lately is do a quick sweeping line like that. It reminds me more of using a brush anyways. If you're inking traditionally on paper, you wouldn't have Control Z, so you gotta get used to doing those quick pulls that give you a nice, relatively nice clean line. So again, thick line, couple little tiny thin ones like that, or break them up. I don't know. I think it looks cool anyways. You be the judge. Yeah, this guy looks pretty upset. Somebody just stole his parking spot. And let's see, I think the ear is ear. I always hang up on little areas like this. Does the face come in front of the ear? I think it does. If you're a heavier set guy, I think your face goes in front of your ear. Yeah, I think it does anyways. Sorry. That's where it helps to look at reference. I could use the mirror in front of my art table here, but I'm just not going to take the time to do that, I guess. Yeah, but I do recommend having a mirror in front of your art table, just so you know. There's certain instances where it really helps. Okay, so now the hair, which is always fun for me. Oh, and just in case you're working digitally, and I hate to say that because I feel bad when people are like, man, I work traditional, can I do those same techniques? You can, you just got to think differently about them, you know. If I say do this digitally, in traditional methods, it would just mean grab your light table. And if you don't work digitally, you should have a light table, even if it's a window facing, you know, getting some light or whatever. It's just so important to have a light table. Digital pretty much will take that need out because you can do everything digitally. You don't really need a light table, but I still have one. I do recommend having one. So at any rate, what I mean by this is for digital, for hair, I'll always add a layer. And if you were gonna, you know, use the same effect with a light table, you would just add another piece of paper, start sketching your hair out, and it just gives you a little bit more freedom, and you're not worried about, you know, maybe messing up, especially if you're at the inking stage. You can sketch it out on another sheet of paper, get a good feel for the flow of the hair, and then go to town with your inking or whatever. And if you're really confident with drawing your hair, then it doesn't matter, but it's just something that I think, for me, it works out a little bit better. Sometimes hair is like, I'll go right to it, I'll draw it, and it'll come out nice, and I'm just kind of in the zone. And other times I have to mess around with it. I'm not sure why that is. I think it has a little bit different flow than the rest of the illustration, so I always struggle a little bit with it. And then other times I don't know, it just makes sense, and I flow right through it. So can't really explain that right now, just the way it is. And that's the one thing I miss about traditional. If you're doing hair, the best thing to use, in my opinion, is a brush tip pen or just a nice brush. You just cannot match what you can do really quickly and efficiently with a brush on doing your hair, inking your hair. It's simply amazing. So generally I'll kind of get in a few of the bigger lines and direction like this. And if the character has darker hair, I always bring the points out to dark. Pretty much every time. And then the edges, you know, and then I can always go back and drop in some highlights. And again, if you're working traditional, the way you could do that is just with a whiteout pen or white ink. A lot of guys use, what's it called? I'm sorry, I don't use it that often. You can Google it or whatever, but it's like a white ink that you can paint back in with, and that's yields some really neat results. So again, I'll bring all the points to dark like that. I'll do some of the flow of the hair, different, you know, varying levels of thickness of the lines right there. I'll draw a little bit into the part, but not much. It's real easy to like overdo that. So you don't want to get in the habit of doing this right here. You know, where you got this real defined shape in the part. You're going to get a little bit of that by the time you ink it anyways, but I just noticed it looks a little ridiculous if you overdo that. Alright, let me pan back, make sure that this guy's shaping up. Yeah, not too awfully bad. I think the ear should be tucked way more. I could probably bring the hair in front of that a bit to make that look more accurate. Something like that. And this is also kind of a warm-up to the next video. My next one's going to be drawing characters in various ages. So I wanted to warm up to that a little bit. And so that'll be the next one. And then soon after that will be the drawing a city in perspective video that I've been meaning to do. So they're all on the way. So tell your friends. Yeah, so something like that, and then I would basically just, you know, if he's got darker hair, then I fill a lot more of this in. You want to leave just a little bit of highlights, and then I can always fill a lot of this in and then just go back with the white, like I said, and just pick apart little areas that I think could be a little bit more cleaned up or whatever. And sorry, I know this is about expression, but obviously the dude has hair, so I gotta draw that in there. You probably do a few more of the forehead wrinkles, and again, showing more age or more into the expression. Finish this real quick. Alright, you're probably like, Rob, leave his hair alone. Just leave it alone. I can't do it. Must add detail. I'm a detail junkie. Alright, and then I can go back through, spot in some bigger shadows to push forms around. Like I think it would look cooler. A lot of times too, and I'll add one more layer for this. Actually, let me see. Yeah, I'll just merge that one down. It's not a big deal. And then I'll add one more layer. You merge down with Command E or Control E if you're on a PC. And then but yeah, so now I'm on another layer and I can spot in some shadows. The other thing I like to do here is sometimes I'll turn it to like a gray, and it's got to be under the lines like that, and I'll spot in some shadows. But what I was going to say for adding mood to this type of you know, character or whatever, this, or expression I should say, is I would add a little bit darker shadows around the eyes, under the nose. Just the other thing that I always say is if you're trying to add mood to your scene, add more shadows. If you're trying to make it look a little more ominous or gritty or whatever, just add a few more shadows, because it just tends to do that. Just like if you're trying to make somebody look really lighthearted and or even a pretty girl or whatever, you want less shadows, less lines. So that's just my opinion. Take it as you will. But yeah, I like spotting in the shadows. This way I can kind of see the art a little bit more and then mess around with it. So I do something like this. Maybe show some of the line breaks, and I could just rough it in at first. You know, see how it jives in this light gray kind of look. I don't know, something like that. Maybe a little bit of shadow under the lip here, just a tiny bit. And the beauty of doing it like this is you can really check your work really fast, and then if you don't like it, you just erase back, and you're not going to hurt the other art, part of the artwork. Sometimes it looks cool to even leave it gray, but I'm going to change it black here in a second. I just want to get a little bit more of that in there. So let's see now, convert that to, oh, I did it in gray, goodness. What I should have did is did it in black and then converted it to turn the slider down, but no big deal. I just lock transparency, select black, grab a nice good sized brush, and then paint it in. No biggie. It's messier because I just kind of scribble it in there, but yeah, and I think that adds a little bit more ominous. Like if you take it from that to that, yeah, it just makes them look a little bit more upset. So, and I can go back in there and clean that up a bit. So I can take lock transparency off, still on black, size my brush down a bit, and I could just go in there and touch it up a bit. Yeah. So at any rate, that's how I would draw a slightly angry face dude. So if this video has been helpful, be sure to let me know. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. It helps me keep progressing the channel. And as always, I thank you for stopping by and watching this video, and more on the way. So talk to you soon.